Hello and welcome to Emotional Intelligence for Sales Leadership and Sales Success. It's time for a new perspective in sales and sales leadership because for many years, sales organizations have really focused on what I call the hard skills of sales IQ. These skills are important. They include consultative selling skills, negotiation skills, closing skills, dealing with objections. And equally important are the soft skills, the sales EQ skills, such as empathy, optimism, impulse control, self-awareness, and one that we'll take a deeper dive into today is emotion management. It is time for that new perspective because when we only focus on really what we call the IQ, is often we end up not reaching peak performance. So when you take a look at IQ, it was and still is one of the predictors of success. This is the anatomy and physiology of the brain. And high IQs get you good grades in school. Good grades earn you degrees. Degrees get you that first, second, or third job. So IQ is important. However, so is the EQ, and that is the ability to manage our own emotions, recognize the emotions of others. It is the ability to read and relate to other people on a deeper level, because without EQ, you can definitely end up being that person that people say, yes, they're really the smartest person in the room, but they're also the person that nobody really likes. So let's take a look at an example of this really outside of the sales training world and how the IQ is important and the EQ is important. This is a picture of a medical doctor. Now, obviously, we'd all agree that medical doctors have high IQs. They've got a lot of education, undergraduate, graduate, residency, specialty. But in this example, let's suppose that this doctor is an emergency room doctor. Now, as somebody runs into that emergency room from a car accident, stroke, heart attack, I guess they wouldn't be running, number one. But is it the doctor's ability to diagnose the issues, apply the knowledge of medicine? Or is it the doctor's ability to remain calm under pressure, relax, that allows him or her to demonstrate and apply the knowledge they know? It's always a combination of both. The sales IQ is important and the sales EQ is important, because without this, I often have seen way too many salespeople allowing emotions to start running the sales meeting rather than effective selling and communication skills. Because if you're meeting with a challenging prospect, maybe you've got an upset customer, often without knowing it, a salesperson can turn that prospect or customer into a saber-toothed tiger, and they start defaulting to survival responses rather than smart IQ and EQ responses. So why does this happen? Well, let's take a high-level tour of the brain. And I really mean this, very high-level tour. So let's take a look at the prefrontal cortex. Now, that prefrontal cortex has often been referred to as the executive center. It is where logical, rational thinking occurs. This is where problem solving occurs, intentional learning, good judgment. But there's another part of the brain we need to be aware of, and that is the amygdala, often referred to the reptilian brain. And it's the oldest part of your brain. It's the first part of your brain that was developed. And like the executive center, it has a job. And its job is to keep you safe. So the amygdala, reptilian brain, is always scanning the environment, looking for danger, giving you messages, go, no go, safe or not safe. So how does this apply to sales? Well, often in sales, when we do have more of those challenging conversations, perhaps a prospect starts lobbing a negotiation tactic at you. They say things like, I'm not really sure we need to change. What makes you different? Is this the best you can do? Well, without high self-awareness, emotion management, you will often find salespeople defaulting to the trigger response regret loop. A trigger shows up, a difficult prospect, difficult customer, and often if we allow emotions to start running that meeting, we respond in a manner we regret. That means we can start overselling, we can start defending, product dumping, discounting, even though We as a salesperson, as a sales manager, we were taught the consultative selling skills to ask more questions. Sell value, not price. Remain calm. But without training around emotion management, that important EQ skill, we are not able to execute the right selling behaviors. We default to the trigger, response, regret loop. Now, how can we change this? How can we improve our emotion management, our ability to display that calm demeanor? Well, number one, to improve emotion management and prevent emotions from running the sales meeting, I encourage you to carve out each and every day quiet time. Because it is only in the quiet you can ask the powerful questions. What trigger showed up yesterday that caused me to respond in a manner I regret? You can ask an even more powerful question. Was I the trigger? Did I not really reflect on who I was talking with, how I needed to adapt my approach, maybe use better language? So it is only with the downtime that we increase self-awareness, because that which you're not aware of, you cannot change. And that which you're not aware of, you are bound to repeat. So if you want to be that person that remains calm under stress, collected in negotiations, improve your self-awareness and you will improve your ability to manage your emotions. Now, the reality is this, is sometimes you might have a curveball come out of nowhere. You're not expecting a trigger to show up. So you don't have this time for deep reflection and introspection. My suggestion is, when you feel yourself getting emotionally triggered, for some of you it's going to be your heart rate going up. Some of you, you'll find your gut tightens up, your throat tightens up. My suggestion is the pause, and you breathe deeply twice, because by breathing you can also ask yourself a powerful question or state the emotion. Wow, I'm starting to get upset. I'm starting to get nervous. I'm feeling intimidated. I'm feeling angry. And by being centered, breathing, taking the pause, you get the conversation out of that reptilian brain that just wants to fight or flight with people, and you move it to the prefrontal cortex that can give a better answer, a better redirect. When we can breathe and pause, we don't have to fall victim to our emotions running the sales meeting, rather than good influence, persuasion, and selling skills. And the third, in that quiet time, I also want you to reflect on the stories you might be telling yourself, because we as human beings are great fiction writers. We make up stories about ourselves. I'm not smart enough. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm a man. I'm a woman. No one will take me seriously. And whatever you say to yourself long enough, whatever story you tell yourself enough, becomes your truth. It becomes a belief system. And what you believe to be true, directly affects the emotions you elicit, that you start feeling, and that affects the actions you take. For example, you might have a belief system that you're not good enough to call on the C-suite, the executive level. You might be telling yourself a story that big office, big title, big questions, I'm going to appear stupid and then I'm going to get stuck. Now you start telling yourself that story, it becomes your truth. The emotions are fear, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. And you know what happens? You never take the action of calling at the right level. Or if you do take the action to call at the right level, you don't show up confident and competent. Watch the stories you tell yourself, because the stories create the emotion that can also lead you to fight, flight, or unproductive selling responses. So it is time for that new perspective. I encourage all of you to really study sales, study consultative sales, objection handling, negotiation skills, asking provocative questions. Those are the hard skills of selling. But take the time to learn, craft, hone, develop the soft skills, the sales EQ skills, emotional intelligence skills, such as empathy, emotion management, optimism, interpersonal skills, self-awareness, reality testing, assertiveness. I promise you, it is the development of the soft skills that help you execute the hard selling skills consistently and effectively. It is time for a new perspective. It is time for all of us to study emotional intelligence, whether you're a sales leader or you're a sales producer.